Hello and welcome to Encounter Roleplay. Welcome to Roll Up. This is the character creation show we have every Friday here on Encounter Roleplay, where we discuss different systems and explore what different people like about them and the different characters we can make with them. This week we will be discussing City of Mists. But before we dive into that, I do want to shout out Encounter Roleplay's sponsors and partners. So that's Tabletop Loot, who help us do these wonderful giveaways before and after most sessions here on the channel. Wayland Games for all of your tabletop gaming needs, including minis, rule sets. There's so much stuff on there at up to 20% discount. And of course, Fantasy Grounds, our virtual tabletop of choice. Unfortunately, this week, I don't think we're going to need it, as City of Mist is pretty unique in that you don't have to roll any dice to make your character. Metamancer, hi. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm good. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I'm excited.
So you are, for people who somehow missed the wonderful shows that have been going on here on Encounter Roleplay, you are the official Encounter Roleplay City of Mist DM. How have you been finding that?
Good. It's the second season that I'm doing City of Mist campaign for Encounter. Our first one was really interesting because nobody from there had really extensively played City of Mist. Actually, the majority, with the exception of, I think, Will, never even dabbled in the system. So it was really cool to see people really pick it up quickly and run with it. And then this season as well, outside of Will, nobody really has played it. So it's just nice at how easy it is, I think, for a lot of new people to just jump in without having to worry about tons of rules. So
yeah, because we were discussing last week with Zippy Zippo about how this is a game where you really shape your own character, and you do that a lot in conjunction with your, is it MC for City of Mists?
Yeah, it's MC.
Yes, MC. And with your Master of Ceremonies, and you kind of shape your character, and you don't have to worry about, these are the rules for my class, I have to add this and take that away, and you could just go forward with a flavor and an idea and just create whatever you wanted. Because you're playing a regular person who kind of has superhero powers. Is that fair?
Yes and no. I think that the tagline that City of Mist has is ordinary people, superhero powers or whatever. And it is that. And the way I like to compare it to other things that most people are familiar with is like DC or Marvel. The whole superhero comic / villain idea and concept is that you have a human person, in most cases, not all, but in a lot of cases, that find themselves having powers out of nowhere. Spider-Man being one of the most iconic of those things, Daredevil being another, where he experiences something and then realizes he has these capabilities outside of his normal self. And Daredevil actually would be one of the prime examples I have of how there's a dichotomy between the human form and the mythos, or the rift, whatever you want to call it, the supernatural part. He struggles, focusing on his human life, and then he's constantly berated by the fact that he feels like he needs to be the vigilante for the city. So there's a really interesting dynamic between how people create characters and how they play them, because a lot of things you play as you normally would as a human. How would you react to these situations? And I'm constantly asking for the campaigns, like, would your character do this? Would they feel this way? How would they experience this particular situation? So I think, it's just really interesting, because it's both. It's the mythos and the person.
So in a way, you nearly have two characters in your head as you're playing a game of City of Mists.
Yeah, that's actually
kind of a fair thing to say?
Yeah, especially as your human self learns about the powers, because they're not, the way that mythos works is legends don't die, right? Like, those things don't go away in the way that City of Mist is created. Like, the legend of Paul Bunyan exists and forever will exist, but it finds itself a human to latch onto, and that human form expands as it learns more about the myth, things that aren't even told in stories. And it takes over. And that's what actually one of the things we can talk about today is what happens when the mythos is more dominant than the human. And that's something that leads people to evolve into what they call avatars in the system. Avatars are basically unstoppable forces in the system. They're like god tier, indestructible kind of levels. And that's what's really intriguing. We haven't quite gotten there yet in the current campaign on Thursday, but I'm really excited to see when that actually happens because it is insane.
Who is the closest in the campaign to getting to that point? Because you can kind of shift towards it, can't you? And you can shift away from it.
Yes. Something they don't do very often in most systems is losing and gaining entire themes of like power sets. It's like almost like losing classes. Like if you multi-class in D&D, it's almost like losing one of your classes when things change, which is completely unheard of in most systems. But Will is definitely, he's the closest to becoming an avatar, and I'm very curious to see what happens when he gets there, because he's only got one. So there's 4 theme cards, and I know you guys probably covered some of this in last episode, but with City of Mist, there's always 4 themes. You never have more unless you have a crew theme, and then there's one more you can get, like mobility or like home base. And that's good for longer term campaigns where you're part of a crew that has evolved a lot together. But for the 4 core, it's either your Logos, which is the human, or your Mythos, which is the supernatural. And you can be split anyway. Usually when you start a new character, I suggest starting at 1 Mythos and then 3 Logos, so that that's for like more like newly awakened characters.
Yeah, you've just only just started emerging from those mists.
Yeah, exactly. So he's at a 3-to-1, 1 only being human left. So if he loses that last human theme, he will become an avatar. And avatarhood lasts either until the player chooses to stop it, or they're forced to stop it because they are no longer pursuing the agenda of their mythos. That forces them to stop it. And it could be an outside force like other player characters trying to prevent them from doing what their supernatural form wants, and or other causes. So it's a really intriguing way to be unstoppable, but then still get in the way of yourself.
That is really interesting as well. You have that aspect of player agency. The player can decide, I've had enough of charging around on this holy warrior agenda, for example.
Yes.
I am ready to go back and deal with the consequences of having been charging around on my holy warrior agenda. Or you have a kind of a party or a mechanical from the MC input of, we're going to try and stop you because what you're doing, you're an avatar, you're a full legend, it's dangerous or it's going in the wrong direction, or I'm sure there are so many reasons for why you'd want to stop an avatar.
Oh yeah, and the MC, one thing to note with the system is that the MC doesn't control a lot of things. It's purposefully leaving it in the hands of the players, and there's like a whole slew of things around that. But with avatars specifically, the way that the lore is in City of Mist is if there is all of a sudden a new avatar, other existing avatars in the city know. They can feel the surge of power, and some of them, if they feel like you would intervene with what they're trying to do, will go to stop you. So it's almost
kind of like that
the bat signal,
quickening feeling.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of things. Yeah, exactly. A lot of things will actually try to stop you. There is a current avatar in the core book who is Hades, Anatoly, and his core motive is to create a force of undead army, right? Like that is his core concept.
Makes sense.
If you're playing an avatar that potentially is there to like squash evil or to destroy creatures of darkness or whatever, he's definitely going to be gunning for you. So it's very, the way that like other myths can be, especially very exciting, having characters create myths that are from the same like lore. Because there's a lot of can happen. Like when I was playing City of Mist with Zippy, we did on 6 and 20, we did we were on different nights, but we did like crossover episodes, and our myths were from the same Celtic lore, and we were like opposing opposites. So every single time our characters met, there was this obvious tension, and we didn't understand what it was like in character until we realized. So it's a lot of really cool stuff like that can happen too.
So last week while Zippy was here, we did focus a lot on the Logos, the normal person, and we had this idea with chat about their mythos maybe being the Muses, and we created this librarian who moonlighted as a life model, I think is the correct phraseology, because she was just inspiring and she had all of these things. And I'm super curious, like, which myths speak to you when you're making a character?
That's a really good question. So I make characters a lot for the campaign as an MC. There are wonderful characters in the book, but I also want to add more elements to it. So when I'm thinking about mythos, I'm thinking actually, when I'm in an MC position, I'm thinking about what would be a good conflict for my players, or what would be a good aid. Other times, if I'm just kind of throwing ideas around in my head of like either potential characters I want to play or things that I would love to see in the book, for example, because I'm writing for them, things like that. I research like way outside the norm of mythos, like things that are super obscure, because it gives you more creative freedom when you're creating power sets, which is something I really enjoy because I'm a very creative person. I like to create things, but it also gives you a unique perspective on thinking outside of the normal mythos. Like Greek mythology is very played out, in my opinion, but there's some really strong influences there. But if you go further back, like we're talking ancient Egyptian stuff, there's a lot of openness around that. Or you can go even further. Celtic lore is one of the big ones that there's not as much documented stuff, or the things that are documented are not as detailed as some other things. So, yeah.
And I guess it's things that have been kind of less recycled already.
Yeah.
You already know how this would work in this context, so it gives you more scope to make a character.
Yeah, exactly. Or sometimes you could just make something up. Like you could literally just make up some powers and be like, in the world that I envision, this is the kind of avatar or legends that would exist, you know?
Thank you so much, McLoken, for that resub. 6 months. Meta is a mythos hipster. I think that's a good title. That should go on the resume. Why don't we talk about if you can, the writing that you're doing at the moment, because you are actually writing for City of Mists.
Yeah. So I was part of the Kickstarter that they recently did for Knights of Paintown. We did the premiere actually on Encounter Roleplay when they were launching it. And I'm doing something called Fortune Row. It's a new district for the system. So in the game, there's like pre-made lore for you in different areas of the city that you can use to narrate or play a game. So I'm writing something called Fortune Row, which is the casino / like high roller scene. Think Las Vegas / Sin City kind of deal. Yeah, so it's very much like that, but I'm also going to be writing a unique set of rules on how to perform heists in the game. That's something that's not currently in existence on the core book, and that's what I'm working with them on, how to allow MCs to conduct heist-type activities. You'll see a lot of that being play-tested in the campaign that I'm running right now for Encounter. Not everything will actually end up in my writing, but it's just to like throw some ideas around and be like, oh, does this work, or work the way I wanted it to? That way, when we publish it, it will be really rounded out and experienced and play tested before people get their hands on it. But I'm excited about it because there's some really cool mythos out there that really lend nicely to that kind of environment, like Sin City wise, as far as like the darker noir feel. And then you can take pretty much anything that's already in the core book and apply it very easily. So it's not like it feels like a standalone, it feels like a supplement to the system. But yeah, I'm excited about it. It's really cool.
I think like Sin City, what am I saying? City of Mess. I've got Sin City on the brain now. I haven't watched that movie in a long time. I think City of Mist in a way almost reminds me of Vampire Masquerade in that there is a masquerade going on of you don't know who has these mythos lurking and you don't necessarily know how powerful everyone is.
Very true.
Do you think that's a fair equation? You've got
kind
of secret society and then you've got the normies.
This is really funny because I was thinking about this literally yesterday, earlier in the day before the campaign, and I was like, how cool would it be to introduce like almost like the caste system that Vampire has, in the way that there's like, yeah. And I was like, that would be interesting to link like heritage of a mythos and how it moves between the human forms that it's taken over the year. I was just like in my brain and I was like, oh, that'd be kind of cool. Like you're stronger, you start off stronger, you know, the closer you are to the origin, and then how long,
and you go down to like that thin blood.
Yeah.
That's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
I love the idea of reincarnations. Like that is something that always inspires me. Sorry, please continue.
No, you're fine. That's what's actually really cool. It is basically reincarnation of the legend, like over and over again. As I said, it doesn't really go away. Maybe it's hidden for a while or recovering, but it never is gone. Granted, that doesn't mean you can't like write them out. But in a general sense, the legends always exist. And then obviously the other masquerade part of it is the mist itself. So the City of Mist represents a place in the world that you can make whatever you want, but the one thing that is constant is the mist. And the mist obscures things in a way that sleepers, aka normal people without powers, don't perceive the world in the same way that an avatar or a rift would. So, you know, it's kind of like the trick of the eye or illusions or explaining away phenomenon. Yeah, exactly. So that's what's really cool is a lot of the time that happens anyway. But one of the things that the mist does and is unique to the city is in some areas, the mist is very thick and heavy and it works very well. Like downtown, that's where the core of it is. And it's very easy to explain away, you know, supernatural phenomenon there. But the further you get out, there are more likely chances that a regular person might see something and be like, wait a minute, did I just see that? And they themselves will probably try to explain it away, but there's something called thin areas where the mist doesn't really work. And that's where a lot of rifts actually congregate. And the ones that have accepted who they are and have embraced that lifestyle will go there as kind of almost like a safe haven for themselves. And that's something actually we did in the previous campaign on Encounter. We had an area that was like a tavern, and it was between the thin areas of the mist. And when you went there,
White Rabbit's Tavern?
Yes. Yeah.
Am I remembering that right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
sorry.
And so that's great. So you can see your rifts, and what I did is actually I made those people that were there, though they're still in their human form, you could see more of the rift. So when they were like when the players were walking through the tunnel, they actually saw who their mythos was, and they didn't realize it was happening. But because the mist was so thin there, their mythos was able to like kind of push out more. So yeah.
Knock in chat, I think jokingly says, I'm going to play as the Legend of Strahd. But the fact is, you could. If that's absolutely the mythos you want to choose, you could easily insert Strahd into this game. Yes, Vlad the Impaler, Dracula.
Yep.
All of these things. And the other thing that's been interesting for me to find out about the mythos is you can kind of tie things together. So it could be all of the vampire... the head vampire mythos, the Grandmaster vampire mythos, all kind of tied in, so you get all of your power tag options that you could possibly want.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So my question is, you've got this mythos, you've got the Logos, the everyday person, and they're kind of semi at war in sort of a power struggle, in an understanding struggle maybe, and then you've got other people in your party who are kind of going through the same thing. And then you've got the MC who's creating this world around you, which obviously has its own struggles too. How do you find juggling all of this and tying it all together?
One thing that works really well for this system is, well, there's a lot of things, but one thing that's really important is that a lot of the narrative is told by the players. So while a lot of like GMs or DMs have to prep a lot of time into creating combat scenarios and like the tables and all the things that they have to keep track of before a game, I think about, okay, last episode, these are the things that they did. Here are the strings that I could potentially pull to unravel the world around them. I'm less building and more unraveling because I want the players to create the world. And that's not to like say the MC's position or role is unimportant, because I disagree. I think it's very important, because this is where the MC creates difficult choices for the players. One of my most favorite things about the system is it's so narratively driven. You can come up with anything on the fly and it will work. So juggling it isn't as difficult. It's more of like when you have all these different strings, you know, you think about it like a spider web, eventually they all have to come together in the center. And the best way to do that is to allow your players to keep weaving that web. Like the current campaign we have with Encounter is that all of the players have a single goal in mind for themselves. And what I do at the very beginning of every campaign that I start is I send them a template. I say, fill this out because it's going to help me, help you, is discover more about yourself as a character. And then I also, outside of that, ask you as a player, what is your goal for your character? Not what your character's goal is, but you. What do you want to get from the experience? And I use that as part of that balance. So I obviously want to tell a good story, but for me to do that, I need to know what the players want to tell as well. So I think it's a balance between giving enough momentum to your players and letting them run with ideas and concepts, and then also throwing both negative and positive things their way to see how they deal with it.
I think that's really, in my head, the equivalent is kind of like you have this ant farm and there are a couple of bits of gravel that the MC kind of puts in there, but you just let the ants make the tunnels. Away you go. Exactly. Or I guess a rabbit hole for the Alice in Wonderland metaphor to extend.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that concept.
As we obviously focus on character creation here, which kind of is from the player side, I think it's interesting to hear from an MC or a DM or a GM perspective on the tools that you give your players to be able to communicate with you what they want. And I think that's something we're seeing more and more in RPG now. In Invisible Sun, which I've been looking into, there's a little question which is like, what sort of player are you? Are you a builder? Are you an explorer? I forget the various options, and I think that's actually something really important to consider as a player. Not only what is my character's goal, but what do I want to get from this experience, and where do I fit therefore in the team, in that meta, the meta circle above the game.
That's actually it's a good point. Something that a lot of people know about me that have like watched me MC or GM other games or being a player is I'm very much against doing metagaming, contrary to my name. However, when it's utilized correctly, it can be very empowering for a player. And something that happens in City of Mist is there's a move called Take the Risk. And that is essentially a pass or fail. It's actually the only pass or fail, really. Kind of Stop Holding Back, but it's the primary like core move that you can do that is a pass or fail on an action. And it covers something like, I know that I'm in danger or my party's in danger, but I'm going to do this thing to potentially get us out of it, but it's very risky. Like, the implications if I fail are significant. And so I'll ask them to take a risk. And we did that towards the end of yesterday's session where I had to give Will, he didn't like ultra succeed in that role. And so I gave him a hard choice that he had to make. That is a metagaming thing because him as a player gets to select which option because his character wouldn't know that those things are available. Right. However, it puts the player in a situation that he thinks about what was his character's intention in taking this risk as part of the, you know, acceptance of which choice he takes, but also his desire to drive a narrative. And I think, again, that's where empowering the players really comes into place with that kind of system is if you do this thing, you can either do it, but XYZ happens, or you could only somewhat do it and XYZ instead happens. And that is, I love that about this system. Another one, that the King is Dead has a lot of the true false statements, or if then but, and Take a Risk is a great example of how that's utilized well, as in addition to what the King is Dead is doing. It's all these statements, and like it's just intertwined with the rest of the narrative, which I really like.
So we had a quick question from Wild Engineer. How much research into the player's mythos do you do as MC?
If I'm not familiar with it, I do a lot of research. If I'm somewhat familiar with it, I'll glance back over and make sure I remember the concepts. But I also rely on my players to tell me what is important to the mythos, because of the fact that you can literally create anything in the system. That's another reason why I have them use the template, because it defines the key elements of the mythos. And the power tags actually allow me more insight into that beyond anything I could research outside of the game. So the only reason research is important for me as an MC is that if they're evolving their character, or like, you know, leveling up in so to speak, in the more generic sense, I can help them with suggestions on what could potentially work. But it's still up to them how they want to play the character or how they want to evolve it from a myth perspective. So yeah, I do a lot of research, but that's because I want to be able to update things on the fly. Though, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, yes, especially for things that I'm not familiar with. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like maybe I can use that concept for something else, or in my writing, it could inspire me in some kind of a way. So yeah, it's both preparation and being like able to update things on the fly, but also my own personal curiosity.
Yeah, and I think the thing about it is yes, it is the mythos, and yes, there is a great big body potentially of like lore and stuff that exists that you can delve into, but when a player or when a person chooses it, they're obviously choosing it for their own reasons and what is inspiring to them. So that's obviously, I would imagine as the MC, that's the important bit. Is what about this mythos is important to you? Yeah,
exactly.
So let's talk a tiny bit about play, because we didn't really cover very much with Zippy, beyond the fact that power tags exist and you can use them to add or to subtract from a roll, and that there are moves. How does it work? You've got your logo sheet cards, and you've got maybe one mythos card. Yes.
So you can combine in the basic rule set. There is something called I think it's like, oh gosh, what is it called? There's a version of the rules that makes it more difficult to be powerful. That's probably better for experienced players who are finding maybe the system is too easy, or they just want to try something new. But let's just talk about the core, which is it's always 2d6 for a roll, plus or minus modifiers. That's the easiest way to explain it. Now, power tags are the modifiers. There are other things that modify a roll, but from a character sheet perspective, that is what it is. So a power tag, if somebody is going to respond to a danger, like they're going to get punched in the face, and that character is like, oh, well, I have something called thick skin. Okay, you can absolutely give yourself a +1 using that power tag, because when you're getting punched, it doesn't hurt as much, for example. Alternatively, if you're getting punched and your weakness tag says that they have frail bones, that would be a negative. And so the power tags and the weakness tags are used as a means to modify a roll. That is, in the simplest sense, what it means. Now, power tags are strange to a lot of people when they're making a character, because for me, the first time I ever played City of Mist was for 6 and 20. I made a character and I picked certain power tags with my own concept of play in mind. Then I got into the game, and after episode 1, I was like, oh my God, I fudged up my character. I don't know what I'm doing. And I talked to the MC and I was like, I think that I want to change the way that I worded some of these power tags, because they're actually conflicting with each other and they're like canceling each other out, and it just doesn't make sense. So he's like, okay, yeah, sure. You know, send me some of your new ideas. And I did. I modified things, because sometimes when you play with such an open system, you don't realize how much influence those power tags have when you're rolling. And because you don't roll that often, you don't necessarily think about it until you come up into a situation where you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. Or I didn't think that through entirely. Or I envisioned this power tag working a different way. And when I actually applied it, you know, out of theory, it didn't work how I expected it. And that's what's really nice, is if you want to talk to your MC about that and you're in a situation where you're like, I really don't like the way that this is working, you can always change it to a degree. But something to keep in mind is you can lose and gain themes all the time. So maybe you leave it as is, and something about your character forces that theme to go away and replace it with something else. So creating the power tags is a lot of trial and error for people. It's like Pumpkinberry is a great example of someone who is finally embracing the concept of City of Mist. And it's not like she was rejecting it before. It's more of like she realizes just how much power the player has. Like the other day, actually yesterday, she was asking, hey, I want to communicate with this person telepathically. And I'm like, absolutely. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. She's like, well, I don't have the power tag of telepathy. And I was like, okay, and what other power tags would allow your character to try to do something like that? And she's like, oh, well, this, and that. I'm like, great.
This to me sums up the intimidating part of the system, but also the incredible part of the system. It's intimidating because you have like an open canvas, like a blank white page, which is the most terrifying thing anyone can be given, especially when they've come from systems with heavy rules to guide you through everything. And then the incredible thing is it's collaborative. You negotiate with your MC to say how a power tag works. And you can push the boundaries and think outside of the box with them to create constantly. It's not just one fixed move that you have, it's something that contributes continuously. And it also can change, as you said, and evolves.
Yeah. It changes all the time, like all the time. When you start making themes, I don't know if you guys covered this, I didn't get a chance to watch the entire thing, but when you create something, you also write a mystery or an identity. Identities are for your logos, and the mysteries are for your mythos. Mysteries are questions. Logos are, you know, specific statements about your character as a human being. Those things actually have implications in game. So if your identity, Wills is a great example. He had a detective that worked at the police force. And one of his identities for his family, his defining relationship, which was with his family, was that to lose them is to lose everything. And what happened towards the end of the campaign, he lost that logos because he spent so much time focusing on the case and the mythos that was surrounding them that he lost touch with that human side of himself. And while it bothered him, it didn't stop him from continuing his path. So that comparison is very much like, if anybody's seen Daredevil, the series on Netflix, that's exactly what happened. He neglected himself in his business and his relationship with his business partner in lieu of doing the vigilante. Yeah, so that is a great example. I spent so much of that series yelling at Matt.
I genuinely have such a strong dislike for that character. I had to stop because I was sitting just screaming at my TV. But as you say, it's such a good example of this conflict within a person when you've got two things that are really important to you and two driving parts of you, and they're kind of going, meow.
Yep. It's very rare.
And you have to make that choice.
Oh yeah, and that's what's great about it though, is it creates a lot of drama naturally and organically. It's very rare that I've seen, actually I don't think I've ever actually fully seen an example where the mythos and the human logos side are not in conflict in any way. My character Morrigan, which was the first character I played in the City of Mist that wasn't like a pre-made, she was a criminal profiler as logos. which actually worked really well in conjunction to her mythos, which was the Morrigan. In Celtic lore, she is like the enforcer of war and justice, her own justice, but justice nonetheless. And when I first introduced my character to the game, for both the players and also the audience, she did something. She just murdered somebody, like straight up. She didn't care. And that was her mythos, because her mythos was like, this person did the wrong thing. And while my human side works for the police on occasion, my mythos doesn't give a crap because justice needs to be dealt. And there was a constant battle between that part of herself. By the end, she didn't care about the justice system in the city. She only cared about her own. And so it was like things like that is what continues to drive character development, because of doing that thing, she kept on losing more parts of her humanity. So eventually she would become an avatar because she ignored the part of herself that was human. And that happens with everybody at some point or another. They will continue to do things or they won't. And they will, if they don't give in to the mythos, then they will continue to not be as powerful. And that doesn't mean that they're not good in the game. That means that they're not going to rely on the Rift's powers to complete tasks. So like Will's character, Gibbs, he is a 3 mythos, 1 logos, like I said before, which means that he has access to more powers than the rest of the party does right now. However, he still allows his human side to investigate things like he normally would. It's just he's also given a benefit from a mythos perspective. And then, you know, somebody like Blue Jay's character, she is also a private investigator, but she actually uses her power set a lot more, even though she's only got the 1 theme card for it. But she uses it in conjunction with her existing investigative skills. So there's some really cool ways that you can play a character. And somebody said it in chat earlier that you could literally have all the same mythos in a party and everybody could play them completely different. And that's 100% accurate.
Yeah, I saw that. I think that was Cleric who said that. And I've just been thinking about how you could take one myth, and if you were in like 2 different games of City of Mist, you could have completely different characters because you've got that human part. That I think humanity always has this grayness to it. It can go 2 different extremes, and it has a driving force within it, but it's kind of it's always something in flux. And then you've got mythos, which is something that has always existed. Like you said, it never dies. It has a driving question behind it. It has, you know, driving purposes and is an extremity. So it's always going to be pulling, and it's whether the human goes towards that. But then they're losing the touch with the society that they're in, the actual city, the real, not the real city, but the everyday city, which is so useful. A human is one of the greatest tools there is in any game because they're so flexible and they have access to so many things. And the more you shift towards avatar status, you lose touch with those things. Yeah. And then there's obviously... Sorry, I'm so excited about saying I want to play now.
I know. I love it. It's literally my favorite system. My first ever GMing experience was actually in Call of Cthulhu. And I love that game for many reasons. I love horror genre. I've played in a lot of other systems, D&D, Vampire, Mage, Exalted, Pathfinder. And I can say flat out, as a player and an MC/GM, City of Mist is still my favorite. It's because it's just so much more flexible than any other system out there, and there's not that much of a learning curve. In about 4 to 6 sessions of the 3 hours, well, 2.5 really, but like the 3 hours each time, I can already tell every single time for the last few times that I've GM'd for or MC'd for City of Mist, the players like get it by the 5th or 6th one. Like they fully understand. They're like, oh, and it like clicks. You can tell, but they still have been able to successfully play up until that point. But it's like they finally realize just how much flexibility there really is. So
normally what I like to do on Roll Up is we make a character and we upload it to the website. But because City of Mist is so open and so flexible and there are so many options, what I would like to do, if it's okay with you, Metamancer, is maybe get one of your characters and have a few examples of their various power tags and things, and post that up on Encounter Roleplay. And I would also like to invite chat, if they have access to the book. If not, go and get it if you'd like it, to make some characters and post them in the Roll Up Discord. And I want to do a big group post with loads of ideas in, because I think this is the core thing that I've been discovering with this character creation is ideas. Build it and it will come. So that is what I'd like to do, if that's okay with you. And I'm going to ask Zippy the same, if I can borrow one of his characters.
Mm-hmm.
I know a little
I'll
bit
give you
about
guys
his
my
Celtic
first character
actually. So.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I'll give you guys my Morrigan character.
So Generally AI asks, in Metamancer's view, does the system favor urban scenarios instead of others?
So that's a really cool question, because the core book writes about those things. However, it also writes that you can make your city whatever you want it to be. So you can literally pick any time period and make small adjustments to the lore, and it will work, guaranteed. One thing I was actually really looking for, and just to mention it briefly, the new district that somebody else is writing for the updated version of City of Mist, that Chris Gunning is writing, is the Underworld themed district. I would love to see that when it's published. Take it and literally create a horror City of Mist campaign. And not talking about like urban times, but like taking it back to like the 1930s or something like that, and doing a horror, because Jordan Shively is also writing Jack the Ripper. And I feel like it would be really cool to create a campaign that uses both of those expansions and do it in the 1930s. And I can guarantee you it will work. I would love to see how it ends up being, but I can guarantee you it would work. And I would love to see something like that.
It kind of reminds me of did you see the show The Alienist? It was based on a book, I believe.
I don't think so, actually, no.
Investigating some murders, and it's set in kind of a Jack the Ripper adjacent period, but it's in New York, which was really interesting to me, because when you think Jack the Ripper Victorian, it's always London. You're always in London. No matter where you are in the world, you're always in London. So I think that's a similar thing, and it's the same thing we were saying with Call of Cthulhu, where you could take that system and you could set it anywhere. City of Mist is the same thing, but you're not even limited to the H.P. Lovecraft mythos. You could go anywhere. And you were saying before we started the show that City of Mist is really, with the supplements that are coming out, really digging into a lot of different areas and new myth regions. Mm-hmm. Is that the right phrase? Myth regions? And
I mean different legends, like from different cultures. And while you can do that now anyway, I think it's really cool that the publishers are also adding details for you to do that, because something that I rely on as an MC. Well, yeah, the inspiration, but also like to quick draw. And I say quick draw, it's almost like having a deck of cards. And the more cards that you get from the publishers, the easier it is for you to look through and be like, okay, this one today. And so the some of the new stuff they're doing the African American legends and Mexican legends. And what's really cool about that is there are already like interspersed different cultural things in the existing core book, but I want to see what else you can do. And what's nice for it, even a new MC, is they can literally go to the book and be like, hey, I wanna grab a character that's already been written by the publisher and I want to use it in my campaign, and you literally just slot it in because it has all the information that you need to go off of. So I think that the more people that end up embracing the system and playing it, I think the more supplements we'll end up getting. And we're already getting 6 new ones because of that Kickstarter. Like, that's amazing. And just like in the span of 14 days, we unlocked 6 brand new pieces of City of Mist, which is super cool. And I'm really looking forward to everything that's going to get doled out. And it's just, I don't know, I'm really excited for them, and I'm excited to be able to contribute something to that as well. So, yeah.
I think this just shows like how important these Kickstarters are and how important it is for the community to say, this is cool, this is what I like. So even if you can't contribute to a Kickstarter, sharing it and getting the hype going is so important right now.
Yeah.
Because there are so many systems to discover. And Barrett Knock, I hope I said that right, in chat says Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde mythos could be interesting. 3 personalities instead of 2. But I would suggest that's already a City of Mist's character, because you've got Dr. Jekyll, whose regular day job is he's a doctor, he's doing his science, and then Mr. Hyde, who is a mythos. He's the man without fear. That could almost be an example of a City of Mist character right there, and you see the driving nature of the two pulling slowly apart, even though they started with the same goal, and the shift towards the mythos and becoming Mr. Hyde all the time.
Yeah, I agree. I think actually beyond that, you could probably make it an indefinite. This is where vampire came into my brain again, because there's so much around that, like the different like different groups like the Camarilla and all that, and the Machiavellian specifically. If you were to create a character based on that, a lot of the time people play that in a way that has maybe multiple personalities, and I think that would be really intriguing to see something along those lines. Morrigan, my character that I made for the first time, she actually had 3 mythos cards and then 1 logo. So for humanity and 3 different personalities, because the Morrigan in Celtic lore often was 3 different sisters. And so I actually played so I had 4 people essentially. And that was super fun because there was not only the internal conflict between the humanity and the powers, but also between all the power sets. One was like wrath, the other one was justice, and the third one was more focused on like the harmony between nature and living and all that. So they were always in conflict with each other too. So yeah, multiple people, multiple personalities would make for a very interesting.
But basically there are no boundaries beyond what you can create and just make work and want to explore with your group, with your MC, and with the other players.
Definitely.
I need to get me a game. I need to get on this. This is the goals.
Do it.
These are the goals. And thank you so much for spending some time. And it's been really interesting that we've been talking about Vampire Masquerade, because that's actually what we're going to be starting on next week on Roll Up.
Oh, nice.
Hopefully, I think we're going to have Encounter Josh join us. If not, I'll have another wonderful guest. But thank you so much, Metamancer, for finding some time to come and talk to us. Are there any last things that you want to share with us about what you love about City of Mists or characters? And any last questions, get them in right now.
I'll take another question.
Do our little giveaway while we're wrapping up.
I don't know if there's literally so much I could talk about. But something that I guess I will give to people who've wanted to try the system is, even if you're not normally comfortable emceeing, I would actually take up the mantle and do it, because it's so easy. Even if you don't get all the rules right, it doesn't matter, because it's all about storytelling. So if you like telling stories, I would highly recommend, even if you don't have a dedicated MC, just somebody pick it up, because everybody is actually part of telling the story. So it can be very easily split between different people, and you guys can focus on creating that together. So that's what I would say for anybody who wants to try the system that doesn't have like a dedicated person to play MCs for.
So there you go. I think this is the great thing about narrative systems, is it's less pressure on the person in the MC, the keeper seat, the DMC, whatever you would like to call it. It's less pressure on that person, because it's constantly a collaboration. You're constantly building together and exploring together, because it's not about who wins. Because winning isn't unleashing an avatar. It isn't going all the way back to being a normal person. It's just finding the end point in your story, I guess. Finding the revelation that answers the question that you have in your head when you start your character's journey. And the parts questions, because there's always some sort of mystery going on, isn't there? Always something to be investigated.
Yeah, layers and layers. Actually, somebody said it in chat, but the core system of the published book gives excellent MC advice. Excellent. Like, I've never seen so much thorough writing on how to write a campaign or scenario, or even like playing the system from an NPC perspective. So definitely, if you have the book or you want to get the PDF to start something, definitely would be easy to do, because they have so much advice for an MC.
And it is a comprehensive book that does give you everything you need. Everything, all the tools. It doesn't ask you to rely on any supplements or any additional. It's just all there for you. Wild Engineer asks, is it difficult playing an NPC as the MC and not overtly affecting the group dynamic, like with Jesse?
Oh, Jesse. If you guys watched the campaign yesterday, you know what happened at the end. To answer the question in the most succinct way I can, it is very difficult to play an NPC that is ingrained with the party. Random NPCs are fine, but someone like Jesse is very difficult because I've had to stop myself on multiple occasions from talking too much. Because I have really like a lot of excitement around what Jesse is as a NPC, because she could easily be played by another character, like another player, very easily, because that's how I built her. And I love that, but it's also difficult because I am an MC, but I also really like playing the game. So I'm getting a little bit of that fulfillment, I guess, with Jesse. But yeah, it can be very difficult, mostly because I don't want to take away from the players.
For anyone who doesn't know, like who is Jesse? Just a real quick
insight
Jesse, into one of yours.
Yeah,
NPCs.
So Jesse, she was introduced to the party early on when they were going through a series of, we'll say, interviews with getting hired by the head honcho for this heist that they're going to be doing. And she is essentially like the liaison between the big boss and the party. And I used her ultimately at the very beginning to help get them on track with some of the things that they needed to do to accomplish the heist in the future. But she evolved into some very strange relationship with one of the players that turned into this whole thing for the audience. And she's kind of a potential love interest for one of the players. So it's like she became more than what she originally intended to be from my perspective. But then I kind of embraced it and ran with it. And she was actually with the party on multiple occasions doing like scenarios, essentially. So yeah, she is a supernatural person like the rest of the party, but I don't want to say what she is because we haven't revealed that yet.
That's fair. Secrets. Chaotic Blue says, you're a great GM, Metamancer, but yeah, sometimes it seems like you have to search for how to respond to a player or a situation with an NPC to not overstep. But hopefully you enjoy the challenge.
Yeah, I do. I love the challenge. Yeah.
I think that's always the challenge when you're the GM and or whatever the role title is figuring out your part in the dynamics when you're being an NPC and figuring out what part of the story you want to tell in that position whilst respecting that you have players who have their specific role within the game.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. That's with every system, of course.
How do you balance that? Like as a GM yourself, what would be your like tip if you have one?
Honestly, this is going to seem really cliche, but even if you're having to play an NPC that's very involved with the party, try more so to ask questions rather than provide answers. I think that's the number one thing because it forces the players to get involved. Even if you are directing some of the conversation, if you're asking the questions and they're answering, they're the ones who are really formulating the story, which is the most important thing, in my opinion, from an MC perspective. So that way you're not dictating what they do. You're asking what they want to do.
It's a really good tip. And I think asking questions is something that The King is Dead really reminded me about, the GM-less system that people should really go and check out if you want a quick game. You need a facilitator. There's no DM. Really great system. And while you're checking that out, check out Sea of Mist. We've talked a fair amount about it, but there's so much to explore without feeling like there are so many rules that you need to understand. And I hope that when I get the post up, probably sometime next week with lots of character ideas, you guys will go and check that out. We do already have a Warhammer, in fact we have 2 Warhammer characters out there and 2 Call of Cthulhu characters. And starting next week, we're going to start building a Vampire Masquerade character or 2. So I hope people will come and check that out. Let's pick a winner. Ooh, I think it just picked 2. That's fine. Lone Kuth and Arcanist81, you are our giveaway winners for some tabletop loot dice. No one tell Will.
Thank you for having me. Also, Arcanus, is that from Warhammer? 40K. Oh,
40K?
Arcanus.
You know, I love me some
Yeah.
Warhammer. I need more Warhammer in my life. And I'd love to play some
just wrapped
Warhammer with
up.
you. Maybe we could make this happen. Oh, really?
That would be fun. I mean, it depends on your schedule, but next year we're going to be starting up a Rogue Trader campaign. So, and I'm looking for another person to add.
Call me. So on that note, where can we find you? What do you do? All of that great stuff.
All right, good. Yeah, you guys can find me primarily on Twitter, twitter.com/themetamancer. And then on Twitch, I don't stream a ton, but twitch.tv/metamancer is the place that you guys can find me. But Twitter is honestly the best place, just because I'm on there more often than not. And then if I'm on other people's channels, that's where I'll post it. So yeah, thank you for having me. I do nothing but roleplay, by the way, guys. So like I don't veer outside of the RP side of things. Like I do GTA RP as well, where I made a character and we're playing out stories from that. And I've done others like Conan Exiles RP before.
I want to shout
yeah.
out your grandma Wacky Racist stream. That was the funniest thing I have seen in the longest time. So yeah, go check out Metamancer. It's pure gold. If you can find the VOD of Meta playing her granny character on GTA, worth
Granny May.
every second. Granny May. Alright, I think that is all for us.
Yeah.
All from us. I hope we will see you all again next Friday as we talk some Vampire Masquerade. And before then, come back on Monday. We have a full schedule here on Encounter Roleplay, which you will be able to see as soon as the stream goes offline. And it's all great. There's not a bad show on Encounter Roleplay. I love it all.
Agreed.
Okay, take care, everyone. We will see you very soon. Remember, don't roll too many nat ones, because we want to be there laughing when you do.